Hi, it's Martin here again. Another video in my 4x5 large format series. It's raining like mad in West Yorkshire today, so I thought I'd come into my office and do a video primarily aimed at people who are thinking of starting into large format photography and they're unsure of what to buy and where to go with it. So I thought I'd do this video, give you some advice and some tips. Before you go buy a large format 5x4 camera, you need to put careful thought into it and don't make mistakes in your first purchase. I'll explain in a minute. You need a camera that's going to grow with you, so to speak. When I first started into large format photography, I bought this camera here, a beautiful little camera, but after a while I found this camera to be restricting in that I didn't have the movements that I really, as I learned with the large format camera, I didn't have the movements to do certain things that other people were doing. It didn't have the bellows extension, so I couldn't get close up to subjects. It didn't have front swing, so if I was doing architectural photography or even landscape, I couldn't control the vertical plane of focus. I could control the horizontal frame, but as I say, I just found it very restricting. So I went out and bought another 4x5 camera and didn't do that much research. I just liked it and I thought, well, I like the look of that one. But it had every movement that I wanted, but the camera simply was just too heavy for me. You know, when you're getting on in years and you're carrying lenses, cameras, dark slides, focusing cloths, the list goes on, the weight increases. And as I say, when you're getting older, you try and keep that weight down. So that's another thing you need to consider, is the weight. So I got rid of that camera and I did a lot more research, got good advice from other people who use 4x5 cameras, and I ended up buying this camera. This is a Chamonix 4x5 camera. This is the model number. I bought this camera for mainly two reasons. Well, three reasons. One, they're not that expensive for what the camera does. Two, they're very, very light cameras. Half the weight of this camera, the second camera that I bought. And three, it has every movement really that you need. There's only one movement this camera doesn't have, and that's rear standard shift. But without that, it still has lots and lots of movements, and this camera will do anything I want it to do. Just to give you an idea, with the bellows, I'll just extend these bellows. I'll probably have to fast forward because it takes a while. Right, that's got the front standard bellow fully out, and the bellows are extended, but I can extend the bellows further by pulling the back on the camera. So I've got all that extension now on this camera, and that means I can get very close to a subject, and I can use longer focal length lenses, such as maybe a 350mm lens. Another reason the camera is very versatile is the movements that it has. I'll just lock this down, pull the bellows in, might have to fast forward again. It's done on a knurled knob at the back. It's very precise, but it's very slow. Right, that's got the bellows now back in on the front. I was saying it's a very versatile camera because I've got on this I've got front rise and fall. It's got shift, side by side movement, and then it's also got swing on the front standard. So you have plenty of movement on the front of the camera. And then on the back of a camera, it's got swing on the back, so I can swing it from right to left, and it's also got the back inclines backwards and forwards. I'll get to do it backwards and forwards. So it's a not overpriced camera. It's well made, and I don't think I'll probably ever need to buy another 4x5 camera for the type of work I do. It suits everything. So keep that in mind when you thinking of buying one. Think about growing with the camera and the things you might want to do. Don't underbuy, don't overbuy, but a camera like that will suit your needs. Lenses. Now the first lens that I would buy would be the 150mm lens. Much like a 50mm lens on a 35mm camera, they probably have the same sort of coverage, but they're very versatile lens. They're quite fast for a large format lens. The maximum aperture on this is f5.6, and as I say, it'll cover most things you do. So the first lens that I'd probably buy would be the 150. Then if you're thinking of buying a wide angle lens, I went for the 90 and I've not regretted it. Again, this lens will do most things. The field of coverage in 50mm is around about, I think, about 30-28mm. And because you've got rise and fall on the large format camera, it does make it a very versatile lens. So I would recommend two lenses, 150mm and a 90mm. I mean, your needs might be different, but I'm just telling you where I went with it, and I've not regretted that at all. Another thing you might want to think of buying, is what they call a lens wrench. Because when you buy these cameras, I can just show you how they go together. That's the rear element, and then at the back of the camera it's got a retaining ring. Now if you want to take that retaining ring off, and if they're tight, you're going to have a right job with that, and don't use something like pliers to do it, because you will end up slipping, and inside there is the shutter. If you catch that shutter with anything, it's easily damaged. You're just going to ruin it, so an expensive mistake. So I'll buy a lens spanner like this, lens wrench, and it comes in different sizes for different sizes, different size rings. Let's see if I can find the right one. Might be this one. That's it. So I've got the spanner onto the retaining ring, and I can slacken that easily. And I take that retaining ring off. So it might be, you see, that you buy a lens and it doesn't come with this lens panel. It's going forever, does this? So the lens might come. Make sure when you buy these lenses that they always come with a retaining ring. They can be difficult to get hold of. That's the lens front element, shutter and rear element. Now if you did buy one, a lens without the plate, always make sure that the Corpal lenses come in Corpal sizes. Corpal O, Corpal 2, Corpal 3. The bigger the lens, usually the bigger the Corpal, and the Corpal is the hole in the centre. Now this is a Corpal O. So if you got a camera that didn't come with it, make sure you know what the Corpal size of the lens, and you need the plate. And this is why you really need this spanner. So if you bought the lens and it didn't come with a plate, you just simply fit it like this together. You get the lens panel, put it through the hole, as I say, this is a Corpal O, and then put the retaining ring on. Tighten that up with the lens wrench, finding the right size. And that lens is tight now, and then you screw on the rear element, and you're good to go, and that's ready to mount onto your 4x5 camera. So recommend buying a lens wrench. Another thing you're going to need is large format cameras. Unfortunately, don't come with built-in meters. You're going to need some way of taking light readings. Now, some people use their SLR, DSLR to do that, or you could use a meter like this. These are reasonably priced. This is a Sekonic L398A. Now, this meter takes reflected and incident light readings. Now, that's great, but the only problem is with incident light readings, and I'll just explain that when I show you the next meter. So that's one meter you could use. You will get good results with it, but the best meter to go for large format is a 1 degree spot meter like this. This is also a Sekonic. This does incident light readings, and it also does flash readings as well. But the reason you'd want a spot meter is, let's say for instance we've got a piece of white card and we want to take a light reading. If I point the spot meter at the white card, there's a little dot in the middle, that's 1 degree, and I take a reading of that card. All meters meter at 18% grey, that's zone 5. So in other words, if I metered at that card and used that reading, that card would turn out mid-grey, 18% grey, zone 5. Now, because I know what reading it's giving me, I've got a datum point to work to. So when I look at the zone scale here, if I point at that white card, look at my reading, I know that to make that card white, I have to overexpose at least 4 to 5 stops to bring that card back to white. So using a spot meter gives you this datum point. Everything you point at is 18% grey, so you can work from that that number figure, so to speak. With one of these type of meters, again you'll take readings, but unfortunately you just don't know what you're metering for. There's no datum point to work for, it's just an overall reading. So you can get away with an SLR, a film camera with a built-in autometer, with a meter that just does reflective readings, but my advice would be to go for a spot meter. The only downside is they are quite expensive, these, but you can pick them up. I did, I bought this second hand and I paid less than half price for it, and it's worked perfectly. So you will eventually want to go for a spot meter. So don't be buying loads of meters, bite the bullet and go for a spot meter. It's the best way of working with a large format. The other thing you're going to need is a loop. Now this loop is for when I've got the camera on a tripod. Just straighten this up a bit. And you're focusing on something in the front, and you've got to get your eye to the ground glass like that, and then you focus the camera. Oops, that looks a bit wonky, all that, but I'll just tighten it up and show you. Yeah, you've got your camera tripod and you're focusing on the scene. You might be using tilts and swings on the front lens, front standard, and you use this for focusing. Now, loops come in all sorts of prices. You probably want a 4 times loop, what they call a 4 times loop. This one's an expensive one. This is a Schneider loop, but I wouldn't buy a cheap loop. You don't have to buy an expensive one. A mid-range loop from a named manufacturer, you'll do fine with one of those. So I've heard people sometimes say they can. Well, I've tried it. You can use a standard 50mm lens and just turn it upside down, and you can use that for focusing. But the best way again is a loop, because it's light and you can't really damage these, so I go for a loop. Another thing is cable release. I have 2. One's a cheap one, that's my backup one, and then this one I bought this second hand. This is a Pentax cable release. This release will last me for years because it's a good make. It's very well made. My advice is don't buy a cheap one for about £1.50 from, say, eBay. It won't last you 2 minutes. So I'd go for 2 cable releases. A cheap one for a backup and a good one for your main cable release. Another thing you probably need, although it's not absolutely essential because you could make your own, is a dark cloth. You could make your own, as I say, through some linen, but you want to make sure if you use one or make one, that when you've got this over the back of the camera, that when you get your head underneath this cloth, that it's dark under there, because that does really help you with focusing. So as I say, they're not essential, but I think down the line you probably will end up buying a purpose-built one, because as I say, they're fastened around the back standard on the camera. You put your head in, no light gets in, and you can focus easily. So if you can see one of these and pick one of these up second hand, I'd definitely go for one. Another thing that I carry about with me is, when I'm talking about metering, is a grey card, 80% grey card. You want a decent one that's calibrated for that. And that means sometimes if you're taking a picture of something and you're not entirely sure where to meter, if you meter with a spot meter onto that grey card, you will get a correct exposure. And you're at that datum point of 18% grey. So when you hold it up to a subject, you can sort of guesstimate where tones are falling. So I'd carry a grey card like that about. Pretty handy to have. You're also going to need dark slides. These are Fidelity Elite. I've always found these to be really good. They seem to go on forever. Probably I've got about 10, but in all honesty, I never take 10 of these out. Again, for weight, I'll probably max out at 4, because doing large format photography is a slow process, and you're not snapping away like you've got a digital camera and you're taking pictures of everything that moves, so to speak. You don't do that with large format because every shot is costing you money, so it's a more thoughtful process. So I'd say to start off, try and see if you can get two of these second hand. And that means you've got 4 shots, because you've got one shot one side and one shot of the other side. Don't worry, that was already exposed. I think, oh no, it wasn't. I've just ruined that one. Never mind. So I would definitely go for two of these dark slides. Fidelity Elite. The other thing is, which is quite important, I found it to be important anyway, is a bag. You see this bag. You need a bag that's going to carry the all the equipment safely, but you need a bag that's going to be really comfortable, because all this gear that you can see, it does weigh you down if you don't have a good bag. Now this bag's got some really good padded shoulder harnesses at there, but one of the main things you want is one that's got a good waist belt that goes round your waist, and you'll find if it's a good one, it's well padded, most of the weight in the backpack will rest onto your hips and take some of the strain off your shoulders. So a bag is very important when you're carrying all this gear about. Go for a decent bag, and you won't regret that. And the final thing, I'll have to get up and get this, is a tripod. You're going to need a reasonably sturdy tripod. It's no use putting a large format camera onto a flimsy tripod. It's not going to work. You're going to get movement. You need a reasonably sturdy tripod. If you can, I'd go for a carbon fibre one. Again, it keeps the weight down. I know I keep going on about weight, but it does make a difference. So I'll go for a carbon fibre one. The head on this one is a ball and socket head. I don't struggle with this. I find it fine. But some people use these, I think Manfrotto make one, like this one, that's got leveling for horizontal and vertical. Brilliant, but again, they do put the weight up, and they're quite expensive. So a ball and socket head, a decent one like this, will work just fine. And as I say, if you can pick a second-hand one of carbon fibre, or if you've got absolutely a bottomless pit of money, you can buy a brand new carbon fibre tripod. But buy a decent tripod that's not flimsy, that'll hold the 4x5 camera without any movements, so to speak. So that's what I would recommend. So to summarise what I've gone through, these are my recommendations. I would go for the first lens I buy will be a 150mm. There's no bad lenses in large format. Any make will do. This tells you below what lens this is. So 150mm. If you was going to go for another lens, I would highly recommend a 90mm lens. Again, it's a lens that'll do most things for you. I would also say, if you can, buy a spot meter. This is going to make a big difference to your large format photography. So it doesn't matter what make it is, as long as it's a decent spot meter. As I say, that will make a big difference. Loop. Buy a decent loop. Don't buy a real cheap one, a mid-range one, or you can buy one like this. This is a Snyder loop. But as I say, you can buy cheaper ones and they will suffice. I would also definitely buy one of these lens wrenches. A very handy thing to have if you're out with your camera and the lens comes loose on the plate. You can tighten it up with this easily, so just keep that in your bag. Dark slides, I'd probably buy a couple of these Fidelity Elite ones. That'll be enough to get you started. Tripod, I would say buy a good, strong, sturdy tripod like this one. Don't buy a flimsy one, otherwise you will regret it. Finally, the camera itself. As I've said before, put some careful thought into buying a large format camera. Don't make the mistake I did. I had to buy 2 cameras before I got to the one that I was happy with. Just try and think beyond what your photographic interests are now. Try and think beyond that and what you might be interested in. You might be interested in portraits. In other words, buy a camera that will do most things if you can afford it. If you can go that extra mile, you won't regret it. The Chamonix is a Chamonix, I think it's called. This one is a great little camera. But you could also look at there are other companies. There's a British company, I think it's called Intrepid Camera Company. They make some decent 4x5 cameras, and they're even cheaper than these. They're not built as well, but they will do the job. So I think that's about it. Oh yes, and a bag. Always make sure you get a good comfortable bag to carry your gear about. So I hope you found this video helpful, and it helps you in your decisions what equipment you want to buy when you go into the 4x5 format. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.